Let's talk about the foods. There's 7 of them that have the potential to actually kill you. So you need to know about these. So let's start at number 1, green potatoes. But guess what? If you are on keto, you're not going to be eating potatoes at all. So you're pretty much safe. But for those people who are not on keto, avoid green potatoes. When you see the green pigment, which is a combination of chlorophyll as well as solanine, realize that is a nerve toxin, and it becomes very toxic at about 3 to 6 milligrams per your kilogram body weight. And there's roughly about between 30 and 50 milligrams of this chemical in potatoes, but realize you have to be eating the green part of that potato. So if you're not on keto and for some reason you eat potatoes, just cut off the green parts, okay? I found the average person in the US consumes 1 potato every single day. So since there's a lot of people not eating potatoes because they're on keto, the other percentage of people are making up, and they're probably doing quite a bit of potatoes, probably not in the form of raw potatoes, but probably in the form of potato chips or French fries. But this compound, solanine, is a natural pesticide designed to protect the potato. But if you are exposed to it, it can cause nausea, vomiting, bleeding internally, paralysis, coma, and potentially death. All right, number 2, nutmeg, the spice nutmeg. The compound in nutmeg that's poisonous is called myristicin. And even at 2 milligrams, you'll get a fever and a headache. At about 7.3 grams, you can start losing consciousness. And if you consume 1 whole nutmeg, you could potentially get what's called nutmeg psychosis, because nutmeg mimics certain psychoactive compounds that they use in certain medications. There's been a report of an 8-year-old who ate 2 of the whole nutmegs and died. So they can be very poisonous. So if you're going to use nutmeg, don't use a lot. All right, now let's talk about green raw almonds, which are very bitter, as well as raw cashews. These have been known to contain a certain amount of cyanide, but they have to be like the bitter almonds, and you'd have to consume quite a few of them to really become totally poisoned. I'm talking probably over 1,000 of these nuts, or 50 ounces. You probably would never do that, but just realize that if you have a smaller amount, there will be a small amount of cyanide in these nuts. So instead of buying the bitter almonds, get the sweet almonds. And if you get them roasted, they're not going to have hardly any cyanide. But the side effect from cyanide can be convulsions, respiratory failure, and death. However, with every poison, there's always an antidote. And the antidote for cyanide is called hydroxycobalamin. This is an over-the-counter B12 supplement, which can then combine with cyanide to form cyanocobalamin, which is a type of B12. So you can turn this cyanide into a B12 supplement. But I don't recommend getting your B12 from cyanide. I don't know, there's something about it that it's probably not that healthy. But cyanide destroys the membrane of the cells, and it prevents oxygen going into the cells. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is undercooked red kidney beans. You must always soak them for at least 5 hours and then boil them. Don't put them on slow cook for at least 30 minutes. If you put them on slow cook and you don't cook it long enough, you could potentially increase the toxicity by a factor of 5 times more toxicity. The chemical in uncooked red kidney beans is called PHA. I'm not going to give you the long name, but all you need to know is this compound causes your red blood cells and your white blood cells to bind together and to be in a clumped formation. And the side effects are diarrhea, abdominal pain, vomiting, and even death. However, so far there has not been any human deaths. We're talking about rat deaths. If you give a rat 1% of this compound, apparently they do not live past 2 weeks. So for your pet gerbils and hamsters, do not feed them undercooked red kidney beans. But of course, if you're on keto, you're not going to be consuming too many beans, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, let's talk about the next one, brown rice, which if you're on keto, you're not going to be consuming either. But brown rice has arsenic, which can lead to heart disease and bladder cancer and many other symptoms. Now, the reason why you have arsenic in brown rice is because a lot of times the soils that they're grown on used to be grown on cotton, which was heavily sprayed with arsenic. Until fairly recently, they used to use a lot of arsenic in insecticides and pesticides. And so the soils have been contaminated, and that can get absorbed right into certain plants, but especially brown rice. Apparently, brown rice has over 162 times the levels of arsenic that could be considered carcinogenic. Now, the other problem with arsenic is that they used to feed it to chickens in their feed to increase weight gain, to create food efficiency. Now, what is food efficiency? That is a situation where the chicken is so fat, it's not eating anymore. It's not hungry anymore. And that's all because of arsenic. As far as I know, most of the companies that put arsenic in feed are no longer using those products, but don't quote me, there might be one or two that are still using it, specifically, I think, for turkeys. In 2011, they stopped using arsenic. But the problem is, before that, I think back into the 40s, they used it from 1940 all the way up until 2011. So we've all been exposed to arsenic, unfortunately. But of course, if you have been doing organic chicken, you'll be in pretty good shape. Now, one indication that you have arsenic poisoning is if you look on your nail, there'll be these white lines horizontally on your nail. That could be an indication that you have too much arsenic in your body. And just as a side note, there are certain antidotes to arsenic. One is blue-green algae, the other is selenium, and the other is zinc. They're involved in certain enzymes that can help detoxify arsenic from your body. All right, I want to talk about uncooked bloody hamburger. I'm sorry, I know that's disgusting, but here's the problem. If you're buying a low quality meat from your local grocery store, you could be exposed to E. coli. And there's a very toxic form of E. coli called verotoxigenic E. coli, VTEC, which apparently can create some serious damage on your kidney, like a loss of kidney function, sepsis, which is a systemic infection, coma, even death. So there's two things you need to do. Make sure that the quality of beef that you consume is high. And number two, make sure it's cooked to the point where there's no potential for E. coli. But I think it's more important to get a quality source of beef. And so if you're going to do something rare, if it's quality, chances are it's not going to have pathogens like salmonella or E. coli. And the question is, where does E. coli come from? It's coming from the cow's intestine. And so in the processing of that meat, sometimes there's a cross-contamination. All right, the next one is cherry pits, okay? Cherry pits have hydrogen cyanide. Now, I know you're probably saying, I don't consume cherry pits, right? I just consume the cherry. And of course, if you're on keto, you're not even eating cherries. But just in case you end up swallowing a few, they are a bit toxic. Like one red cherry pit has 3.9 milligrams of hydrogen cyanide. And one black cherry pit has 2.7 milligrams. But one Morello cherry pit has 65 milligrams of hydrogen cyanide. And the toxicity level would be between 0.2 to 1.6 milligrams per pound of your body weight. So if you're a pretty light person, let's say you weigh under 100 pounds, 0.2 times 100 pounds is 20 milligrams. So if you're accidentally consuming one Morello cherry pit, which has 65 milligrams, you could be way over the limit. So the symptoms of being exposed to hydrogen cyanide would be abdominal pain, of course. It'd be nausea, headache, and other more serious fatal symptoms. All right, that includes our list of foods that you need to avoid. And the next video I think you should watch right now is the healthiest foods you need to eat. Right here, check it out.